Hello everyone, Scott once again bringing you seven of the best movies from years past. This is my second video focusing on 1998. If you'd like to see the previous one or any of the other videos that I've done so far on 97, 96, 95, there's a link to the playlist in the description below. We left off with American History X last time, the drama with Edward Norton as a reformed racist. And now I'd like to move on to a much lighter film called Zero Effect, one of my favorite low-key movies. It was directed by Jake Kasdan, who has directed very little that I've admired since then. Stars Ben Stiller as a private detective and... No, excuse me, I'm sorry about that. Bill Pullman is the private detective. Ben Stiller is his assistant. They have sort of a Holmes and Watson type relationship. Bill Pullman's character is extremely socially uncomfortable, just very, very eccentric, and oftentimes just like unpleasant. But he's able to. He's extremely intelligent and sharp, and knows a lot about a lot of different subjects, and so he's a great guy to have on your side if you need a mystery solved. And he has a big one because Ryan O'Neal is a businessman who's hired him to help him find his keys. He's worried that they're in the wrong hands and that someone is able to access some evidence that will implicate him in a crime from years ago and send him to prison. This person is demanding money from him, and so he's hired Bill Pullman's character, Daryl Zero, aka Zero of the title, to solve the crime and figure out who it is who's blackmailing them so he can put a stop to it. Really funny movie, and very clever too. It's a good little mystery. Yeah, the mystery is not the primary focus of the movie. It's this character and the way he deals with the world around him. It's kind of fun. Kim Dickens is a paramedic who he meets in the course of an investigation, and she might actually be a good match for him, which is not something that he's used to. He's not the dating type. It's a really, really good movie, one that I've admired ever since I first saw it. Let's talk a little bit about Saving Private Ryan. Most everyone knows about this movie right here. It's definitely one of the best movies to come out that year. Got a nomination for Best Picture, lost to Shakespeare in Love, and I like Shakespeare in Love, but I think Saving Private Ryan, of course, is quite notable for its technical virtues, as well as just the fact that it's a good story and has great battle scenes and what have you. It's of course about them looking for this missing Ryan soldier, James Francis Ryan, who turns out is played by Matt Damon, and this was after he was in Good Will Hunting. Sort of a coincidence, I guess, because this movie was shot before Good Will Hunting came out. No one realized what a big hit it would be, or at least not. I didn't. Anyway, Tom Hanks, of course, is a leader of the squadron that's been assigned to find this guy somewhere in Europe. Who knows where he could be, and bring him back to the States because his three brothers have already died in combat, and the U.S. government wants Ryan to go back home to be with his parents so that his mother isn't childless. Anyway, yeah, it's a really, really strong picture. Really great photography. Just technically, it's quite masterful. It's pretty long as well. Some people think it's a little overly sentimental. I'm actually one of those people, but I wouldn't discount it entirely. It's definitely a very noteworthy Spielberg picture, for sure. Then we have Pleasantville. A lot of you who have been watching me over the years know what a big Reese fan I am, Reese Witherspoon, and this was a movie that I was looking forward to quite a lot, to the annoyance of certain close friends of mine. When I just would not shut up about her, they couldn't see what the big deal was, and it would be a few more years before she actually became a movie star and was admired, but I had been watching her since like 96 or whatever. Anyway, this movie has her co-starring with Tobey Maguire. They are brother and sister, and they get accidentally sucked into a 1950s black and white sitcom with William H. Macy and Joan Allen as the head of a very sort of white-bread, straight-laced household in the suburb where nothing bad ever really happens. It's just some, very sort of lighthearted and innocuous conflicts. And they, with their modern sensibilities, introduce these new attitudes to the town, they're somehow able to interact with the whole community. It's this, it's a fantasy. It's this ridiculous fantasy, but it's a fun little movie. Jeff Daniels is also in it. Then I'd like to talk about Dark City, which is a movie that Alex Proyas directed. He previously did The Crow with Brandon Lee, and he went on to do I, Robot with Will Smith, and Knowing with Nicolas Cage. But Dark City is a movie that I was just blown away by when I first saw it. Oh my goodness, I was not prepared for how emotional I would get during this movie. There's this city, basically, where the sun never rises. It's always nighttime. And this guy, Rufus Sewell, the main character, is walking around with amnesia. He has no idea who he is or how he got there. But he sees these mysterious people in coats and hats with pale faces wandering around, manipulating people, putting them into these positions, and then injecting things into their heads. And then the buildings around him shift around. He's just like, what is going on here? Where am I? What is happening in this place? It's a big mystery with the science fiction twist. And a lot of people know about this movie, so you probably know what the story is behind the shenanigans. But if you haven't, I'm not going to talk about it because you really ought to see it. It's a very, very exciting movie. And when I actually discovered in the course of the movie what had actually happened to him and the other people in the city, it was just like I got so emotional. I don't know why. Certain science fiction movies just, make me emotional more than any just sort of straight tearjerker drama about a person dying of cancer, what have you. When people are in this crazy situation that they never could have imagined, that really gets to me somehow. 12 Monkeys and The Fly, those are movies that are sort of similar in that sense, and really like this movie a lot. Terrific movie. Next, I'd like to talk about another World War II movie called The Thin Red Line. This was the return of Terrence Malick. He hadn't made a movie in a couple of decades, and he finally got around to doing this World War II picture adapted from a novel with a really big cast. But it's an unusual war picture, very, very unusual. It's sort of like, I don't really have the words to describe it. It's like effervescent in a way, and it's also beautiful to look at. The photography is phenomenal. If you have a really, really nice flat screen and a Blu-ray player, you would do well to pick up this movie because it is quite gorgeous. The photography is amazing. Really big cast: Sean Penn, Ben Chaplin, Elias Koteas, John Cusack, Nick Nolte. A lot of smaller parts by even more famous actors. Yeah, it's quite compelling. Every time I say, gee, I'd like to see this movie again, but I don't know, it's really long, I actually find myself quite compelled by it. It's 3 hours long, and the third hour is not quite as exciting as the first two, but it's still an excellent picture. Even if all you want to do is just look at it, it's great. But it's a very strong picture nonetheless, and unusual. Malick's been making a lot of movies, a lot more frequently recently. He's got The Tree of Life. He did To the Wonder. He's got a movie with Christian Bale coming out called Knight of Cups, which I'm curious about. But nothing that he's done has been as good as The Thin Red Line. Next, one of my very favorite movies of the year was a drama called Your Friends and Neighbors. It was directed by Neil LaBute, who did a indie film called In the Company of Men, and this was sort of the movie that made Aaron Eckhart famous because he played such a despicable character in it. Aaron Eckhart's also in this movie. It's sort of an ensemble cast of 7 characters. Jason Patric and Ben Stiller are the other men in the movie, and some of the women are played by Catherine Keener and Amy Brenneman, and there's a couple others I can't recall exactly. No, I can't remember exactly who they are, but it's been a few years since I've seen it. Really, one of those movies where everyone is sort of exhibiting bad behavior, but it's just sort of accepted as a fact of life. It's just like, people are nasty. That's just how it is. And some people might protest against that, but Neil LaBute tends to have a very cynical or pessimistic view of human nature, and this is definitely a great example of that. He went on to do a much lighter picture called Nurse Betty, which I'll talk about a few videos from now, which is also very good. But he's primarily known as, what's the word I'm thinking of? Yeah, I'm at a loss at my vocabulary on occasion, but it's a really good movie, and it's a really great cast of dialogue-driven scenes right here. There's one scene where Jason Patric approaches Catherine Keener in a bookstore, and the tension between them, because these characters hate each other, but they're making nice, is just fantastic. The last movie I want to talk about is Steven Soderbergh's film Out of Sight, a delightful, delightful movie. Such a joy. I watched this movie again with a friend of mine a couple of months ago. It's so much fun. George Clooney is a bank robber. He's escaping from prison with the help of his buddy Ving Rhames. Jennifer Lopez is the federal marshal who catches him, but they sort of take her hostage. And as they're driving away from the scene, he's talking to her and getting to know her, and he really likes her, and he wants to get together with her, even though she's going to arrest him if he shows his face around her. Steve Zahn's also in the movie, Albert Brooks, Don Cheadle, Catherine Keener again. But this is the movie that sort of came back to the studio system. He'd done the 1995 film The Underneath, and it didn't go so well for him. He really didn't enjoy the experience. He felt that it was too cliche or something like that. I really liked the movie, but Soderbergh was dissatisfied. So he went and did this really sort of low-budget movie with just basically his friends and his wife called Schizopolis. And once he sort of recharged his batteries creatively, he came back with Out of Sight, and he brought a lot of style to the movie. It's another adaptation from the same writer who did Jackie Brown. Let me see if I can remember his name. I can't. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on that. But it was adapted by Scott Frank, who went on to write Minority Report, the script from Minority Report. And but the style of this movie is just great. The scene with Jennifer Lopez in the bar and George Clooney runs into her and they sit down and they have a little chat is just one of the greatest scenes in any movie ever. It's terrific. So that wraps up 98. If you haven't seen the previous video on 98, of course I mentioned the playlist earlier, I think, and that's below in the description. Always appreciate views and especially comments. Thank you very much for that. And I will see you again very soon with a video on 1999, a totally killer year for movies. I'll see you then. Bye.